Just when everyone had lowered the casket and thrown dirt on it after the Clippers started 6-21, they are right back into contention for a play-in spot. In my opinion, probably favorites to get that 10 spot at least. The best offense and point differential in the NBA over the last 2 weeks. They currently have the 5th easiest remaining strength of schedule in the league.
I think it's possible that Kawhi is in the top 3 or 4 of players you would take fully healthy for a postseason run. I'm talking this guy is at his best and you can have him on your team. What chances is he going to give you? Kawhi is playing at that level right now.
I just honestly never understood the idea that they would tear it down. That never made sense to me. Why would you tank without your first round pick? That's like saving all of your income and deposit into someone else's bank account. Like why would you? It doesn't track.
If they can get to a world, Derrick Jones Jr. now back from injury, if Zubac can play at his level from last season and all of a sudden they're adding Derrick Jones Jr., Nic Batum, and Brook Lopez to the rotation, I think they might be better than they were at the end of last season when they were talking about how scary they were. I think this team is actually sneakily really scary and nobody's accounting for them.
This is Hot Hand Theory. This is a podcast where we talk about the NBA and break things down from an analytical perspective. I'm your co-host XJ. As always, I'm joined by my brilliant co-host Geoff. And Geoff, we have to talk about who is the hottest team in the Western Conference. The resurrecting from the grave Los Angeles Clippers. They are rolling right now, including wins against the Rockets, Pistons, and Lakers. The best offense and point differential in the NBA over the last 2 weeks. Best differential relative to the Vegas spread the last 2 weeks. Kawhi Leonard is back to playing at an all-NBA level, nearly MVP level if we're considering the last few games. Just when everyone had lowered the casket and thrown dirt on it after the Clippers started 6-21, they are right back into contention for a play-in spot. In my opinion, probably favorites to get that 10 spot at least. And I couldn't wait to talk about the Clippers, Geoff. But I want to let you start because I have a lot of thoughts about the Los Angeles Clippers. I am just so excited to talk about them. So I don't want to dominate the time. I want you to dictate where we go first with the Clippers.
Yeah, this is such an exciting team to cover right now. And one of the reasons you didn't mention is just Clippers fans have been so good to us, to you and I. I mean, they were the first big video we ever had way back when in year one, when we were just getting started figuring out how to do this. And last year before the playoffs, like Clippers fans are sneakily big Hot Hand Theory fans. So it's a really exciting team to cover right now. But I mean, this is a remarkable story that nobody's talking about. It's so wild to me. They're 6-21, and it's not just that they were 6-21, XJ. They were 6-21 coming off a loss against OKC that capped off a 1-10 stretch that coincided with Kawhi Leonard's return. So Kawhi Leonard comes back. He's not skipping back-to-backs. He's playing every single game. He plays 11 straight games. They go 1-10 in those games. James Harden plays all those games but one. Zubac plays every one of those games. They have their big three. You and I have been very, very loud about how awesome Zubac was last year. And they're looking at 6-21 with nowhere to go but up. And then Zubac gets hurt in that Lakers game. And naturally, they just haven't lost since. They just haven't lost since Zubac went out against the Lakers. They're destroying opponents, as you alluded to. Double-digit victories against the Pistons, Lakers, and Rockets. So many places to start. But, I mean, we just have to start with Kawhi Leonard. Because, I mean, this Clippers team, it's just two guys in Kawhi Leonard and James Harden who are right now playing at an almost unprecedented level for two stars the way they are. We've talked about synergistic duos. We talked about Luka and Austin Reeves earlier this year and how when they play together, JJ Redick's making it work. There are duos on other teams that have, some of them are alternating. Some of them just work perfectly in tandem. What Leonard and Harden are doing right now is just, it puts them in a category of their own because it's not like they're interactive on the court. They're just both simultaneously awesome. And I want to specifically start with Kawhi because I have a bit of a spicy Kawhi take, XJ, and I'm curious what you think about it. I was thinking about just the NBA in general since, let's call the LeBron era, since he joined the Heat, so early 2010s. And I think it's possible that Kawhi is in the top 3 or 4 of players you would take fully healthy for a postseason run. I'm not talking about legacies in terms of career resume like Kareem or something like that. I'm talking this guy is at his best and you can have him on your team. What chances is he going to give you? Kawhi is playing at that level right now. And for anybody who doubts it, go and watch that Pistons game. Actually, you and I were texting when that was happening. That was one of the most unbelievable two-way performances you'll ever see from a single player. This guy was everywhere. He couldn't miss. Didn't matter what shot he was taking. His defense was remarkable. Two-way impact at that level is just, there are only a handful of guys who can do it. And, we're talking LeBron, peak Steph, peak Jokic. How many more guys are you putting ahead of a Kawhi that can do that? I think you're exactly right. They come from 6-21. If you have Kawhi playing like this, you have Harden playing like this. We're going to talk about the Brook Lopez Zubac dynamic. I think this team is actually sneakily really scary and nobody's accounting for them.
Totally scary. And I agree. I think it's a hot take in terms of the framing. I think in terms of the reality, if we were to see a healthy, fully powered Kawhi, it's tough to argue the contrary because he can dominate both ends of the court. And also in a playoff situation, we're talking about him being able to get to really high efficiency looks anytime he wants. The guy's currently shooting 52% from the mid-range on extremely high volume. He's 99th percentile in volume and 90th percentile in efficiency from the mid-range. Like, obviously he hits threes at an incredibly high level. He's 41%, 42%, 41%, 40% the last several years from three. He's a little bit down from that, but is trending up. Dominant defensively as we know he can be. And he's 34 years old. Like, he should be slowing down ostensibly, but what we just saw might have been the best single game performance of his entire career at that point. So it's really incredible what we're seeing from Kawhi. To take our listeners a little bit behind the curtain, Geoff, you texted me in early December and you were like, man, what do the Clippers do? Like, it seems like they're in an impossible situation. Like, do they tear it down? What should they do? And I said, they just need to maximize the season. And if Kawhi is healthy, I think they make the play-in, and they're just scary for whoever they play. I don't care who it is in the league. If Kawhi is healthy, I think they'll be scary. And this is nearly the same team from last season, because besides the fact that their aging stars, James Harden and Kawhi Leonard, are actually playing much better than they were last season, what happened? They lost Norm Powell, who is a big loss offensively, but it was their defense that had actually fallen off to begin the season. They were top 3 defense in the NBA last season. And prior to this recent stretch, which largely without Zubac, as you mentioned, they were a bottom 3 defense in the league. And that's not explained by losing Norm Powell. So to me, things looked really, really rough early on, but it's like you look through what's going on and you dive deeper into the numbers and you watch the games and you're like, what? This doesn't really make sense. This doesn't add up that this team should be this bad. So to me, that's why my thought is you stay the course, even if things look really rough right now. You stop giving Brook Lopez DNPs for no reason, and you let the guy help your spacing and rim protection as he is still able to do at this point in his career. And you stay the course. The Clippers did that. They currently have the 5th easiest remaining strength of schedule in the league. And they're right back in the mix. And again, like I said, should be favorites to land that 10 seed at least right now. And I do want to talk about more of the differences and more of the reasons I think that they were struggling early versus what they've been doing now, and why I think that it always made sense to stay the course. But I want to talk about something else really quickly, and I want to get your perspective on it, because this is something that's been like eating away at me to some extent and something I've been wanting to talk about. All I heard from kind of broader analysts, NBA analysts and media members and all of this, especially fans, is like, well, the Clippers are going to tear it down. Who should we poach off the team? Like, can we get Chris Dunn from them? Can we get Nic Batum from them? Like, can we get Brook Lopez from them? And I just honestly never understood the idea that they would tear it down. Like, that never made sense to me. The most obvious reason, it should go without saying, they don't have their first round pick. Why would you tank without your first round pick. To me, that is just not an option. That's like saving all of your income. And, I want to save all my money and I want to have, be able to do this in the future. Let me save all of it. And what I'll do is I'll save all of it and deposit into someone else's bank account. Like, why would you? It doesn't track. And to me, it's like, well, then you must say, oh, well, maybe they have some contracts. If they don't trade them now, they'll lose them. No, Harden, Kawhi, Zubac, DJJ, Brook Lopez, Chris Dunn, Batum are all under contract for next season or have team options that the Clippers are likely to pick up. So any trades that they want to make now, they can easily do in the offseason. There's no benefit. The only one who is not under contract for next season is John Collins, who, if you trade John Collins, although he's been playing a lot better, shooting the ball way better of late, that's not exactly tanking to me if you trade away John Collins. Like, I think he's helpful to them and has been when he plays well, but he's a bit of a, up and down player. And so, like, I don't think you're saying if we trade John Collins, we're throwing the towel in on the season. So what's the advantage of tanking? What was the advantage of tanking for this team? Unless Sam Presti is paying you under the table, it's not even a consideration. You try to make the play-in until basically you are mathematically eliminated. And if you tear it down, you do it after the season, not to give OKC the best possible first-round pick that they can get. That was the thing that had frustrated me so much, just hearing the conversations about the Clippers. I also thought they should be good. And given what we saw from them last season, being one of the scariest teams in the league going into the playoffs, like you and I both said in our coverage of the Clippers, you can find that on our Hot Hand Theory channel. We talked about them as being horrifying and scary to play for, even against the Thunder or the Nuggets. And so given all of that, having Kawhi be the healthiest he's been in years, it makes sense to me that they're back in the thick of it. I anticipated that they would be, and I never understood the idea that they should tear it down and go in a completely different direction.
It just doesn't pass the smell test, because just on the pick logic alone, like, why, even if it was, one of the bottom teams that own the Clippers pick, you still wouldn't want to just hand them a top pick. You don't want to hand anybody that pick, but especially with it being the Thunder, you have to do everything you can to make sure that pick falls lower and lower. And, I brought up the Zubac injury earlier. This low key could have been best case scenario for them right now. And again, I'm not saying that in any form of Zubac shade. XJ and I are super, super high on what Zubac was to them last season. I think he's essential to their ceiling, whatever ceiling you want to talk about for this team. I think Zubac has to be a part of it. His defense is that important. But I did a little dive into the data, and one thing that really, really stuck out to me, XJ, the Clippers are dominating opponents this season, on the whole season, not just recently in these winning however many in a row. On the whole season, they are dominating when Kawhi and Harden play together. Almost 9 points per 100 possessions when the two of them share the court together. You see this, across the league, duos, tandems. What you don't see is the team just falling off with when one of them plays without the other. They are getting crushed in both of those scenarios, losing the points. Those lineups are basically all losing when Harden's on the court without Kawhi, and losing at a way worse rate when Kawhi is on the court without Harden. What this says to me is that as great as Kawhi and Harden are, they need some semblance of a supporting cast. They need something to help them. And let's bring this back to the Zubac injury. What did it do? It brought Brook Lopez back into the rotation, and it brought Nic Batum's minutes up. He's playing almost 25 minutes a game across these last 5 games, or however many games since they started winning, shooting 45% from 3. Brook Lopez is averaging 28 minutes a game, shooting 44% from 3. If they can get to a world with Derrick Jones Jr. now back from injury, Zubac gets this time to rest, gets right. If Zubac can play at his level from last season, and all of a sudden they're adding Derrick Jones Jr., Nic Batum, and Brook Lopez to the rotation, I don't even know if they got worse. I think they might be better than they were at the end of last season when they were talking about how scary they were headed into the playoffs, because now you have these 2 all-star, fringe, all-NBA level players with a supporting cast that allows them to play apart from one each other. You're not forcing big minutes on them together because they have to both be on the court because they can't tread water without them. Now they have the depth when Zubac returns that they can play more lineups. They can diversify their strategies, their lineup combinations. I think in a weird way, this Zubac injury opened things up for them and long-term could be beneficial for them, assuming he can come back healthy.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant insight. And now you all see why I open up the show, every show, saying my brilliant co-host, because that's tremendous insight. And I think you see it from the data with Kawhi and Lopez on together is really strong, and Harden and Lopez together is really strong. And obviously, I'm a big proponent of a stretch five, a guy who can space the court, pull guys away from the rim, especially rim protectors. It makes your whole offensive approach that much easier. And so I think there's a ton of value there. But like Geoff said, we are huge fans of Zubac, and he was incredible last season. I thought definitely was a major contender for Defensive Player of the Year and probably should have been closer to the top than he ended up being. But he has not had the same impact that he had last season. And there's a couple of things going on as far as like Zubac himself. I don't think it's necessarily a function of his poor play. I don't think he's hit the ceilings that he hit last season, but I don't think he's been like bad or anything like that. I know you weren't saying that either, Geoff, but I think that there's a couple of major differences between last season's team and this season's team. And it is mostly on the defensive end. I mean, I always start when I analyze a team like this about like, okay, this is pretty similar squad. Like the stars are playing better. They got a couple of better pieces in like Brook Lopez. Okay, they lost Norm Powell. I see that, but is there something happening that's out of the team's control? So I look at luck factors, and the biggest luck factor is wide open 3-point shooting, right? So teams that are shooting, or when a team shoots wide open threes, by definition, you have very little to no effect on what they shoot on those shots. They're wide open. So whether if they're playing the Clippers or they're playing the Lakers or they're playing the Warriors or they're playing the Knicks, it doesn't matter. They're wide open. So you have no impact on what they do. The best you can do is affect who gets wide open. And if those wide open shots, where they come from on the court, potentially you can affect those things, but even limited in those capacities. So I looked at that shooting, and teams had been shooting red hot on wide open threes versus the Clippers this season. They overall are shooting 41% from three on wide open threes on 18.4 attempts. That's fifth worst in the league. So they're getting really poor shooting luck. Last season, opponents were shooting about average on wide open threes against them on 17 attempts. So last season, no bad shooting luck, about average, league average, what you would expect teams to shoot on wide open threes. This season, really bad shooting luck, way above what you would expect teams to shoot on wide open threes. That is out of the Clippers' control, and that is something that normalizes, typically regresses to the mean, as we might say, over time as time goes on. And we're starting to see that already, and that's going to make a huge difference. On open threes, which is the defender, the nearest defender within 4 to 6 feet of the shooter, there's a similar imbalance there as well. But wide open threes is the major luck factor. And that is going to, I believe, start to change and shift. And we're going to see the Clippers defense look a lot better as things move on. And it's going to be like, how are they so much better? What happened? Luck. Luck is a factor in basketball, ladies and gentlemen. It just is. And those things normalize over larger and larger sample size. And I think that we're going to start to see that. The other thing that I wanted to point out is that the Clippers are actually giving up a lower frequency of corner threes this season, which is obviously the easiest three to hit. But teams are shooting almost 4.5% better on non-corner threes or above the break threes than they did last season. That's good for a difference of eighth last season to dead last this season. This is an incredible amount of 3-point shooting luck that they are experiencing, negative 3-point shooting luck that they are experiencing. And that, to me, is responsible for a lot of their issues. There's another aspect of it in terms of rebounding. Rebounding has been significantly different. They're 23rd in the league in defensive rebounding this season. Last year, we're first in the entire NBA. They're having issues as far as field goal attempt disparities. They're not getting as many shots as their opponents because they're giving up more offensive rebounding. So there's possession battle losses that are happening for the Clippers, those things are all things that are going to start to normalize, going to start to get better. They're playing Brook Lopez. Zubac is going to come back healthy, as you mentioned. They're a gang rebounding team. They don't generally have one guy that sucks up all the boards besides Zubac, and he's been a little bit down on that this season. Hopefully he's better when he comes back. But as you said, I think that they found something to the point where they can be even better than they were. It's all contingent on how Zubac plays, but I think they're in a really good spot now moving forward as far as making the play and doing some damage and being a very, very scary team to play for anybody who gets them.
Yeah, I can't imagine a team at the bottom of the West wants to see them, whether it's in a play-in or, whoever look, we've talked about the Thunder multiple times. I don't think the Thunder are afraid of anyone, but I mean, if you're the 1 seed, I don't think you want to see the Clippers as the 8 seed. The thing you talk about, the defense, it's already starting to show, peek its head. Going into that OKC game, they were 26th in the NBA in defense. They're top 5 since. So the shooting luck has to already be turning around. And then one more note about Zubac, where I really think they're missing him on the other end. This blew me away when I looked at this. So he is Harden's primary screener when Harden's running that screen and roll. This season, Clippers players on rolls are scoring just 0.95 points per possession on rolls, which is 3rd worst in the NBA. They basically are hitting their roll or never. What do you do naturally if you know that you don't have a roll man who's a threat to score? Well, you isolate more. This season, the Clippers are isolating on 13% of their possessions, which is more than Miami. Everybody's talking about the Andy LaRoche system and simplifying it and talking about Jesus. I just call him Andy LaRoche. I'm thinking about a baseball player. Noah LaRoche.
Yeah, nice.
You remember Andy LaRoche, the baseball player?
I knew exactly what you were talking about.
That's our era. Noah LaRoche. Everybody's talking about the Noah LaRoche system and simplifying it. It's always only about ISOs. That's not what it's only about, but isolating is a part of it, and the Clippers are isolating more than the Heat are, but they only turn it over on 6% of those isolations, which is 2nd best, and they have the 6th best points per possession on isolations. So basically, Kawhi and Harden have said, well, pick and rolls don't work anymore because we don't have a roll man as a threat with Zubac hurt, and nobody else really likes to roll. Brook Lopez will pop. I guess we just have to do it ourselves. It's the Thanos meme. Fine, I'll do it myself. They've been amazing at it, but I want to note, even being 6th best in efficiency on these isolations is just 1 point per possession. Now, this is where we talk about relativity because, yes, they do have the 6th best efficiency on these ISOs. They're doing it 13% of the time. But 1 point per possession in modern NBA is not good offense. It's just not. Teams are scoring at way too high a rate. You have to be able to create better offense that's scoring closer to 1.2. Some of the best offenses, the Nuggets right now, 124 offensive rating, Knicks 121. You just have to score at a higher rate. And while it is nice that Kawhi and Harden are elite isolation players, these things will matter more at the end of games and playoff games, as we've seen. Over the totality of a regular season, you need your offense to score at a higher rate than they're capable. Even as elite isolation players, you need your offense to score at a higher rate. And that's where having an elite screener like Zubac helping Harden and Kawhi get into the paint, helping create sprays out to the perimeter so they can get more open in rhythm threes rather than relying on Harden to draw fouls on threes, hit tough step backs. Like, you need more diversity to your offense, and completely removing a screener from your offense, it just makes it harder. I think when Zubac gets back, if he can be his best self, not only is he going to help normalize the defense in addition to the shooting luck, but I think he's going to be a big boost to the offense as well.
Yeah, those are great points. I definitely think the Clippers look at the kind of isolation offense as ways to create gravity, to create shots for others, because like you said, they don't have the greatest rolling threats. I think they've always pretty much been a heavy isolation team. Any team that has James Harden is going to be a heavy isolation team. Like we know that that's the case. And then Kawhi also loves to isolate, and those guys are incredible. But like you said, this is generally, even for very efficient isolation offense, is generally low efficiency offense relative to other things that you could potentially do, especially when you compare it to, like, transition baskets. Those are like the highest efficient attempts, but efficiency attempts. But all that said, I do think that they can get by on their isolation driven offense as long as those guys are creating for others, if their defense continues to play at a high level. And that's how they won last season. They had a relatively similar amount of isolation last season, but the defense was dramatically better. And if you can hold teams down like they did, you can win with sub-ideal offensive approach, although they can improve upon it. Like you said, I think if you get the best version of Zubac, you add in Brook Lopez with the spacing, now your isolations are even more devastating. It requires help to come from further away. It opens up shooters, with more space around them. Those guys can play even better and be better, the best version of themselves in terms of the shooting ability. You have pick and rolls where you have better spacing around them. All these things can get better and better, and I think that they will. But to me, the biggest factor for the Clippers is going to be the defense. Can the defense be anywhere near as good as it was last season? To do that, they're going to have to rebound a lot better. They're going to have to generate turnovers a lot more than they have. They've been lower on turnover generation. And then they're going to get the 3-point shooting luck. I believe that that's something that's just going to happen. So if they can work on that rebounding aspect, Zubac can come back, redouble his focus there, and then incorporate some more offensive versatility. Like you mentioned, the Clippers are going to be really, really in shape. And again, like you said, be a dangerous team for anybody who they deal with in the play-in. And then in the first round, if they're playing the Spurs or they're playing the Thunder, that is not going to be a comfortable and enjoyable matchup for any team like that. Any last thing you want to say about the Clippers before we get out of here?
No, this was a lot of fun to cover. Just thanks to anyone who's new here and made it through to the end of the episode with us. We really appreciate you. Love covering this team. This is just, and the league. It's just a ton of fun. So thanks to anyone who made it to the end.
Definitely appreciate anybody who's been here with us. I also want to say, Clippers fans, these are our takeaways from watching the team. And Geoff watches as much basketball or more basketball than anyone I know. This is one of the more enjoyable teams for me to watch. I watch a lot of games afterwards. If you know, League Pass, every possession replay is the best thing to watch because you can watch everything in like 30 minutes. But these are our takeaways. We would love to know from the people who watch them every single day, day in and day out, look at all the data, what is the major difference between this team this season and what they were last season and why they struggled out the gate, especially defensively, because, I don't think Zubac had been like particularly bad, but his impact on the game hasn't been great. So like, I would love to hear what you all think as far as like what helps account for plummeting from a top 3 defense to a bottom 3 defense, although they're on the rise, aside from the things that we mentioned. So appreciate you all listening and being with us, and looking forward to continue to watch the Clippers as the story is going to continue to go as the season goes on. For Geoff, I'm XJ, and this has been Hot Hand Theory.